No, it is. Sorry. Today, I want to talk a little bit about healing from heartbreak and the power of forgiveness and being able to do that. So, we've all heard 1,000 times that when we forgive people, right, that it's more for our benefit than for theirs. Um, but I want to talk a little bit more about what that can look like and why it can feel so hard. I think a lot of times we're not ready to do that. And so there's a lot of conversation we can have around this. But today I just want to talk about this one piece of it. Okay. So, what I've noticed is that I have experienced more pain and heartbreak in my life than I ever would have thought useful to a human. And what I've learned, though, is that each of those experiences have actually brought me closer to the person that I always actually wanted to be. And that took a process for sure. It wasn't instantaneous, but what I had to learn in order to really allow myself to heal from the painful things was that I needed to learn how to let go of my own defensiveness, my own justifications, and my own anger and my own hurt, right? We can always justify our anger. We can always justify how we're feeling. And if you're in a place where you need and want to feel hurt, angry, justified, whatever that might be for you, I want you to know that that's okay. You're allowed to feel however you want to feel. But what I have noticed and what I've seen with a lot of my clients is, I had one client tell me recently, she's like, my therapist keeps telling me that, you're justified, your anger is justified, this is justified. And she's like, I know that it's justified, but she's like, I don't want to feel it anymore. It doesn't feel good to me. And I want to learn how to let go of that. And so learning to let go of that is the first step in being able to actually step into love and compassion and connection and all those kinds of things. And so we all want relationships that go better, whether it's a breakup, whether it's a coworker that you're having a hard time with, whether it's your child. We don't generally want to just stay in that negative emotion. Some people do. And if you do, that's okay. But this is for the people who are feeling the tension of that self-righteousness, the defensiveness, that justification and screw them, and just kind of that anger that doesn't really feel very healing for you. And so I had to learn to let go of those things before I could allow forgiveness and compassion and actual genuine love for these people to take its place. And for some people that took longer than others. But what I found was that as I learned to do this over and over again, that there was actually something possible on the other side of that process that I really didn't expect. And what I found was that when we as humans are able to show up in this way and do this work, that through that process, we can actually find deeper levels of intimacy and connection and understanding and even love and trust on the other side of that process that we didn't think was possible. I've done this with my parent, with my mom, with certain exes, partners that I've gone through this with, conflicts. And the conflict itself felt so bad and so nasty, but it was so amazing to go through the process. And on the other end, we actually ended up being so much closer and having such deeper levels of trust and intimacy than we ever would have because of the experience, not in spite of it. And so that's just something that I wanted to bring up just as something to consider. Why is this worth it to go through this process? Because it's not easy and it does take a little work. And so that's my reason for why I choose to notice when I'm feeling angry, notice when I'm feeling defensive in a relationship, notice after a breakup that didn't go the way that I wanted. What are all the feelings that I'm having? And are they the feelings that I want to be having? Or is there something that I would rather, if it was possible for me to feel love for this person, if it was possible for me to have true forgiveness, to even have some compassion, to see where they're coming from, would I rather be in that space? And for me, the answer is yes, because it's better for me and it's better for that relationship. And they're not all going to be ones that end with making up and being friends and having, they don't all end like that, because that takes another person willing to do that also. But even if they're not, it's still better for you. And so when we talk about healing from heartbreak or things that are painful and the power of forgiveness and what that takes, I was working with a client on this the other day, and she looked at me and she said, Robin, I don't even know what that would look like. And it made me think about a letter that I wrote to somebody years ago, where I was in this relationship. And at the time, I was a very avoidant attachment style, right? If you know about the anxious and the avoidant, and those can be so painful. I was very avoidant. I was very walled off. Anytime things got hard or felt uncomfortable or overwhelming or emotion that I didn't know how to deal with, my answer was generally just to shut down, disconnect, cut the person out, cut off communication, pretty much to just not deal with it, to just not have the conflict, not have the conversation. That was just the easier thing to do. And so what I noticed, though, was that that was really painful for those people that were really in love with me and that loved me and cared about me. And what I noticed for myself was that it really didn't feel good to me either. I felt the relief of not having to deal with all that bullshit anymore. But also what I felt was not very proud of myself. I never really had that sense of, I could justify it and be like, you did the right thing. It was the best thing you could do at the time. What I could come up with all the reasons why it was okay, why it was the best thing to do. But really, truly deep down inside, I didn't feel great about it. There was always this nagging feeling like maybe that wasn't the highest choice. Maybe that wasn't my highest self. Maybe there was a better way. And so I went and I found this letter, and I read you guys a while ago in one of my YouTube videos and lives, a song that I wrote about the girl that lived in the castle, right? And being so walled off to love and how lonely that was. And this is a letter from a relationship that I went through, about a relationship that I went through around that same time. And I think when that client said, I just don't know what that would look like, this came to mind for me. And I wanted to share it with you, because for some of you, that might sound like something you want to get to, but you might not even know what that could look like. And so it might be helpful to kind of have an example, because once I realized what was possible for me, how I could have done that better, it's like some things you see and you can't unsee, right? It's like once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. And what I saw was the possibility that I could show up for myself. I could get my needs met for time or space or whatever it was. I could communicate that. I could make sure that I got what I needed and still have love and compassion for the other person and still communicate to them in a loving and compassionate way, very directly, very clearly, but lovingly, instead of just shutting down. And so I wanted to read this letter and with you and share that with you, if that's something that you are going through right now. Dear Maria, I just wanted to tell you, this was written a couple years after the fact, when I had time to process this. I just wanted to tell you very clearly and truthfully that I do, in fact, love and care for you. The way that our relationship ended was really hard for me. I felt violated and pushed in ways that did not feel good to me. If I'm being totally honest, I really even felt that I was being manipulated at times. And I was just so overwhelmed with so many painful and negative emotions that did not feel good or loving to me. It was never my intention for things to end the way that they did, but I just didn't feel like I knew what else to do. Pulling away and shutting down the interactions and the communication felt like the only way I knew to take care of myself in all of that. I do have a lot of anger, and it's making it difficult for me to see any reasons why I would ever try to open this pathway up for connection again. I'm not necessarily saying that there aren't good reasons or even that I never would, because right now I just truly don't know. All I'm saying is that it feels really difficult for me to go there or to see that pathway right now with everything that I'm still going through. That connection created a lot of hurt and fear and pain for me. And I felt betrayed by it, really. And so I'm just noticing that it feels difficult for me to trust it again. I realize that may not necessarily be entirely true objectively. And I know that you did not mean to hurt me or consciously violate my need for time and space, which really felt like a form of love and trust and respect to me. But that is still the way I experienced it. I can see that you were feeling very afraid and alone and rejected and maybe even abandoned in all of that, as you could feel me pulling away. I can see how painful that must have been for you. And I know that it triggered some deep wounds for you that created behaviors that you aren't proud of either. I really wasn't very strong in navigating that dynamic in a clear, direct, but also loving and compassionate way that allowed me to get the time and space that I needed, while also helping you to see the things that I do actually love and appreciate about you. I know that I could have offered you a little more validation and support as I navigated making that relationship shift and separation with more care and love than I actually did. I'm working on learning how to be able to do that better in the future, because I never meant to hurt you either. I really never meant to hurt you either. I am so sorry for the pain that we both felt and went through in all of this. And at the same time, I'm also grateful for all the fun and loving connection that we did have while it lasted. I'm so glad to have met you, and I wish you every good thing in this life. You are a beautiful person, and you deserve everything your heart most deeply desires. With love, Rob. Like I said, I wasn't able to embody that space right at the time. It took me a little while to be able to get there. But when I was, all of a sudden I was able to see how I could communicate what I was feeling and honor those feelings, and that they're valid. And so is the other person's, that they have an experience and a side of this too. And to be able to show up with love for yourself at the same time that you can show up with love for someone else, that makes all the difference. It changes everything. So many of us think we either just have to be a doormat and not take care of ourselves and just only give the other person what they're needing and at our own expense, which is not useful. Or we think we just have to disconnect and throw up a wall, which is what I did for many years. And what Brene Brown would say is, if all you have is a doormat or disconnecting, that's a shitty ass tool bag, right? There's so much more, right? Where we can have love for both ourselves and another person. And in order to do that, we need to be able to let go of the defensiveness, the anger, the shame sometimes that's underneath it, right? All of those things. We need to learn to be with those things and heal them in order to step into that forgiveness and that compassion. And the more we do it, the better we get at it. So I just wanted to share that with you as something that might help you visualize what could that look like when I'm in that kind of place, when I'm really feeling those feelings so strongly and you can't even see the pathway to love for another person. It is there. And if you want help with being able to navigate that, my inbox is always open. So feel free to DM me or email me, and I'm happy to talk with you about helping you kind of walk through that, because it can be hard, but it is possible and it feels so amazing. And like I said, on the other side, you actually might find that when you're able to see that person and they're able to see you, you might find something beautiful that you didn't expect. All right. I love you guys. Talk soon. Bye.